Hello everyone, this is Sol Inferno, and I'm a magical essayist, a scholar of occultic lore, and I study esoteric practices. I purview hidden knowledge and lost arts of the non-forbidden kind. Some things might be dangerous to try, and are not safe for life. It's scary, but not as dangerous to know of, like creepypastas. Despite my love of scientific method, none of the things I speak of can ever be directly proven with current technology. If you are involved in the occultic world, kindly run all the things you have learned here through your own channels and guides, and do not copy wholesale or practice and regurgitate without passing through your own filter. You will land yourself in trouble, and I'm not bailing you out. If you are not involved in the occultic world, it's a good world building for a blood-pumping dice roll. My lawyer agrees that this is all entertainment and not meant to be taken too seriously. There are many job roles, some known and some unknown. It is impossible to track down the numerous new appointments since they are created as needed. It's a case of we need this, you go do it, and now you've got a new job. Not every generation will have a spiritual role appointment. Not all appointments succeed either. After all, sudden death is sudden, and it can destroy any plan of spirits. On a side note, both the living and the dead have spiritual energies. The actions of the living affect the dead, and the actions of the dead affect the living. The classifications of the dead, like the ancestral tree's decisions, may not be mirrored in the living. A brother may be spiritually their sibling's father, and friends can be spiritual siblings with more than two spiritual parents. All of these twist together to form a complicated web of relations that can be frustrating to unravel. Family elders. In terms of the living, the family, clan, or tribe elder are commonly chosen based on age, wisdom, and experience. In terms of spirits, it is an esteemed role to select living people to represent and speak for them. They may not necessarily have the age, as certain cultures have the practice of choosing children to commune with the gods. Sometimes to become the family elder, they have to go through trials, consuming toxic or hallucinogenic plants and roots, going on spirit quests and extended fasting, and so on. Other than having a certain amount of power within the family, elders can have improved spiritual connections as well. Family guardians and familiars are more inclined to aid or advise appointed elders. With their experience and wisdom, it is easier for them to understand and digest messages from spirits. Another factor is that family elders are the adults, whom have always been leading younger generations. As such, they already have a level of trust and respect from the rest. From a solely spiritual perspective, the considerations for family elder appointments are centered around communication, leadership for future trials, destinies, or soul contract completion of any kind, and a social glue to hold everyone together. However, it is not easy to fulfill all these conditions, especially considering the frequent flooding conditions for humans. It also saps energy to appoint and place a spiritual marker on a person, and it's easier to place one on those who are already linked to the family tree. The difference between sending electricity through an established power grid and driving through the wilderness in a van to deliver batteries and mail. Another reason why you shouldn't deep dive into spirituality without a network or a trustworthy group. A solar flare can easily take out your own spirit Wi-Fi and solar panels. Surrounded by rabid creatures and wolves in human skin, safety and caution should always be paramount. As I said earlier, not all appointments succeed. To a family tree with a smaller network, loss of an appointed person can be very detrimental to them. So proper elders need to be chosen with great care, and not a move to be done lightly. Godparents. In traditional Christian culture, a godparent is a close relative or a friend that is tasked with being an extra adult to help guide the child to become closer to God. They help with moral values, religious teaching, and may extend to monetary aid. In the legality of certain countries, godparents are the alternate legal guardians of the child aside from the parents. In most cases though, it is a social feature and holds no real power. In spirituality, however, A godparent is the same as a step-spirit parent, or a spirit guardian. In reference to my previous video, spirit ancestry. Unless you want to split hairs, there's no real difference. Despite making a video splitting those hairs. Anyway, anyone, living or dead, can be a spiritual godparent. This can get confusing when mixed families exist, and there can be biological parents, step-parents, godparents, adoptive parents, and abductive parents. From a legal standpoint, it's already a nightmare figuring out who owes child support and who has visitation rights. From a spiritual standpoint, it's based on each ancestral tree's decisions. Some are extremely strict in allowing a third supportive spirit parent. Others are much more loose in this regard. As humans often pick up energy from those near and dear to them, a human can absorb enough cultural and spiritual influence to enter said family tree. The best connected spiritual energy is then their godparent. If the original parental and ancestral spiritual energy allows or is cut off, then there is no need to go through all these hoops. These people will have new parents in spirit. Spirit guides. Spirit guides are simpler to explain. They are a staple in the occultic world, and oldies among this world should know the meaning of this. For the D&D players dipping their toes into living fantasies, I'll keep this as straight as possible. Spirit guides are spirits who guide people. What their guiding entails are more often than not connected to the person's enlightenment or spiritual trials, some of which can come in the form of soul contracts, another mainstream occultic reference. Personal quests, divine trials, karmic burden, past life connections is another endless list of why people have spirit guides. Or they can be self or divinely appointed. How involved these guides are depend on their nature and job description. There can be more than one spirit guide and repeated roles. It's like having bodyguards and teachers. Not all teachers can teach every subject to an expert degree, and there are many who are hyper-specialized. Same with bodyguards. Having many means they can cover more ground and increase surveillance effectiveness. How they do their job depends on the restrictions, guidelines, and personalities. It's the subtle difference between patiently taking you through the subjects and chunking the entire dictionary and telling you to memorize it yourself. Spirit guides can guide from the living, as a human or creature. As a creature, they can sometimes be known as familiars. As such, spirit guides are not restricted to the realm of spirits. Although living, these spirit guides may take some time to restore their own knowledge base before they can perform the guiding. Like the rest of souls or spirits, they can be flawed like any other. Corruption by temptations among the material and mortal plane have always been possible. It's a great risk for spirits to be born in the flesh again. After all, opposing forces exist and can exploit the vulnerable flesh. It is also a way to renew the humanity in spirits when reborn as humans. If reborn as a plant or an animal, it refreshes their worldviews and empathy beyond a single species. This can be very important for spirits on their own quests. There can be strange trials, like being born as a beggar for 100 lives, to be killed at birth 100 times, to be a leader 100 times, to enjoy the rewards of humanity for 100 times, to convert or teach a philosophy to 1 million individuals. It might not make sense to others, but these are some of the trials I know of. Some of these things require personal expeditions, and for those spirit guides, the lines can blur, as they too will require their own guides. In the realms of spirituality, there are much less boundaries than what the human mind can comprehend. Death guides. This is an uncommonly known type of spirit guide. They can be the ones who lead you through your end or cause it. They are not the ones to guide the dead, but are not limited to only the dying. Common tales of past loved ones visiting to lead you into the light, and vengeful spirits dragging people to their deaths. For those who guide others to the end, the task can be to ensure a peaceful passing or a painful end. It is a loving moment to have a spirit of a loved one pass soothe a soul in their last moments. They can take away some of the pain, share it, or shield it. A largely unknown factor is the reality that the soul is not indestructible, and neither is it immortal in the truest sense. Mortality itself will have to be discussed for another time. As a person passes through phases of their life, not to mention the end, the soul can fragment and break. Death itself is a critical point in life. During the passing of a life, the soul can fragment. Painful and sudden deaths can worsen this situation. And so, one of the tasks of a death guide is to protect and possibly mend the passing soul. There are no clear boundaries between job roles, and spirit guides can transition into becoming a death guide. As with the previous category, the spirit guides as well as death guides can exist in living flesh. In fact, they can also exist as pestilence itself, or plagues, calamities, natural forces like typhoons, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and the rising of mountains. Things that people normally wouldn't consider to have a soul or be a spirit have their own inexplicable, reaching energies. Unfortunately, I cannot answer as to why tragedy exists, only that it does. Orders are orders. For those death guides, the pain they cause is nothing personal. But not always. Ending bonus! Many of the categories I've made aren't all my own, but nitpicking has splitting that I'm forced to recognize through the thoughts and actions of others. There's barely any difference, but some ancestral families are completely anal retentive. They are absolutists who only care about blood superiority and wonder why they keep failing at the same point. These rotten trees are the particular favorite to strike down among higher forces. For those forces among the enforcements, trial givers or punishers is like roasting fermented beans. Personal tastes differ from divinity, but among each of them, they have their own preferences to the amount of rods they hunt with the ranks of the dead. Instead of rot, they see them as fermentation. Looking through the worldview of trial givers can be quite perverted, and are best left for another time.